I didn't hate it. Huh. Justice League, I just got back and I don't want my 2 hours back. I'm kind of stunned. I know I said back in, I think it was February, maybe March, that I wasn't gonna go see this, but I turned around on that since then because the reason I initially said I wasn't gonna go see Justice League was because I did not want to financially support the vision that Warner Brothers had for this DCEU. I just didn't think it was nothing I wanted to see. But I ultimately decided to go and see this movie because it was very clear from newer marketing material and everything that's been said about the future plans for these movies that they are not sticking to that vision that I really did not like, as represented by Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, and to a certain extent Man of Steel as well. I will grant readily, I went in with very low expectations. I did not think I was going to enjoy this movie. I didn't expect it to be as bad as Batman v Superman. Now, bad to my sensibilities. Before I get into this any farther, let me say this. If you genuinely like Batman v Superman, first of all, good on you. I'm glad you enjoyed that movie. I did not. But if you did, you're probably really not gonna like this Justice League because it is, as I said, a pretty clear departure from that. Now, it's not a clean break from it. It's kind of in a weird middle ground, like between where they probably now have decided they want to be and where they already were. It's a weird stepping stone, but I'll get back to all that. So, like, I did have low expectations going in. I went in assuming I'm probably not gonna like this, but I'll be really curious to sort of pick it apart and autopsy it, basically. And it was fine. It's not great. I'm not sure I'd even necessarily say it's good, but it's enjoyable. I didn't hate any of the characters. I didn't even hate Aquaman. I was dead certain I was gonna hate Aquaman. Hated him in the trailers, but no, he works. You know, when Momoa is allowed to do more than just go, yeah, and stupid moments like that, which are still a little stupid in the movie, but when he is allowed more than that, he works. He's good in this part. Ezra Miller as the Flash is enjoyable and, you know, kind of, you know, he's a little bit, he's not ready for prime time is sort of where he is, but it's nice to have that element. You know, Gal Gadot as Diana, as Wonder Woman, she's great. She's been great in that part. That's nothing new. Cyborg worked a lot better for me than I thought he would as well. I just expected him to be bland. Ray Fisher does a surprisingly good job conveying a lot of inner turmoil with a surprisingly little amount of actual screen time devoted to that. So I was surprisingly impressed with that. Ben Affleck as Batman wasn't bad, but here's a weird thing. He was better in Batman v Superman, but I'm gonna kind of come back to that because I want to focus more on the positives and then I'll get into sort of my issues because there are some. But the thing is, there's nothing about this that infuriated me or made me feel, you know, offended, which there were things in Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad that did both of those things. And that didn't happen here, really, at any point. So, you know, that alone is a step up. But at the same time, there's nothing in this movie that's like, oh, that's the reason to see it. Like, most of your really great superhero movies, you know, well, if they're great, they're hopefully good throughout, but they'll also have and this is the reason you need to see it. You know, in Avengers, it's that massive blowout fight at the end where everybody is coming together. Well, honestly, really just that shot that pans around them and they're all there. It's like, that's the moment where everything's building to. Wonder Woman, it's the no man's land scene. It was like, that is the moment to see in this movie. I couldn't actually tell you what the moment, like the moment of this movie is. So it's kind of it's in a weird middle place, which makes it actually difficult to talk about because it's not so great that I like want to praise it to high heaven, but it's not awful. It's fine. So it is in that weird middle ground where its lows are not horribly low, but its highs are not very high either. It's middling. They also made the rather interesting choice to very clearly sort of be mourning and talking about Superman as people kind of wished they had portrayed him in, especially in Batman v Superman, and not how they actually did. And also, not just him, like the world. Like there's all this talk of, you know, he was a beacon of hope, and now that he's gone, the world is in chaos. Like, I remember watching Batman v Superman, world was in chaos already. Like the entire premise of that movie is the world is in chaos because he's there. So in a lot of ways, this is kind of rewriting history a little bit in terms of acting like Batman v Superman was a bit of a different movie. It doesn't completely contradict it, although there's some other things that just logistically don't line up. Nitpickers are gonna have a field day with this, but you know, it's very obvious that they are trying to change gears for the franchise as a whole, and they had to with this very significantly. So I think I'll probably start getting into my negatives. I think I can probably keep this review spoiler free because I'm not sure, well, two things. I'm not sure that there's anything that I really want to dig into that would be considered much of a spoiler. And the other thing is, if you've seen all the trailers, I'm not sure there is anything to spoil. There's not really any big surprises, any big twists to this story, to this narrative at all. And I don't necessarily mean that as a knock. It's not trying to play anything like a twist. And that's, you know, really where things get bad. But it plays out pretty much exactly as you would expect it to. So in terms of issues, oddly enough, they're largely visual. So the first is Steppenwolf, who's the villain. Well, before I even get into the visuals of him, he's fine. He's functional. He reminds me of kind of the lower tier Marvel villains. He reminds me of Malekith from Thor: The Dark World, or he reminds me, I think, best of Ronan the Accuser from the first Guardians of the Galaxy. He's fine and he's there, but he doesn't leave much of an impression. He's obviously just there to be big and intimidating, and he does that well enough. But I gotta be honest, he looks like crap. I mean, basically the effect looks like a cutscene from a PS2 game. Like it looks like something from 12, 13 years ago. And what's infuriating about it is there was no reason to make him a 100% CGI character. Like, the only thing that required CGI assistance about his look, because he's got completely human proportions, and he's got a very human face, and the design they went with could have been recreated instead with prosthetics, and it's just a big helmet. There's no reason that could have been done practically. The only thing that they need CGI enhancement for is the fact that he's supposed to be as tall as he is, but honestly, the number of shots that he's actually next to another person who is actually there, you know, Batman, Wonder Woman, whatever, are so few and generally are action scenes. They could have gotten away with just having a CGI stand-in for the fight scenes, but then for close-ups, had a real actor and a prosthetic, because those close-ups, he does not look good. But I sort of want to address the look overall, because you look at the earlier trailers and the later trailers, it's very obvious that largely what was done under Whedon, and whether or not you want to say this was his intent to do it, or this was what the studio said they wanted him to do when they brought him in to finish because Zack Snyder couldn't finish the film, this has very clearly been lightened. Not just in terms of tone and characters, but literally lightened. The light is brighter, there are fewer shadows, there's less darkness in it. And there's a problem with doing that, and that is a lot of the elements in this, both special effects and some of the practical elements, were very clearly designed with the intention that they weren't going to be brightly lit. I think the best example, honestly, is the Batsuit, because, I thought the Batsuit looked fine in Batman v Superman, but it was shot there the way it was designed to be shot. It was very obvious that Zack Snyder, with that movie, had a very specific, very dark and dampened color palette that he wanted to use, and the suit was designed with that in mind. Now, they basically have him in the same suit again. Well, they've got two. They've got him in a different suit for the climax, but for most of the movie, he's in the suit that he was in for the majority of Batman v Superman. And here, it looks really bad. And it's not because the suit in and of itself is a bad suit or a badly designed suit, but when it is in bright light, it looks terrible. And it's very obvious that it was designed to be heavily shadowed, to not be this clear. And when it is, it looks bad. It's not a good looking suit for the way that they've altered the color palette to make the whole thing lighter. So, and there's other things like that too, in terms of the visuals not quite working, where I think a big part of that is they were originally designed and conceived and initially worked on with the intention that everything was going to be darker than it ended up being. And once it was lightened up, the things that the darkness and the shadows helped cover or were designed to accentuate now don't work. For the most part, Cyborg looked fine. There were, however, one or two shots where he really did look like a floating head. He kind of had the Green Lantern movie, Ryan Reynolds' head kind of looked like it was floating on that body at times. He has that. It's only in one or two shots, to be fair, but when it happens, it's really obvious. I think that's about it for the main set. I think the last stretch of stuff I'm going to talk about, if you have been avoiding a lot of the marketing, might qualify as spoilers, so this would be your time to duck out before I get there. So that's your warning. Here we go. Okay, so Superman coming back was interesting, and I think it's very obvious that Henry Cavill is now playing what they're hoping audiences will embrace more of Superman, and this kind of factors into them sort of acting like Superman was a different character in BVS than he actually was. So and then another technical thing, I think it's very obvious what shots I don't know if you heard about this, during the reshoots, he had a mustache because he was shooting another movie that he needed a mustache for, and he couldn't shave it off because he was still in the middle of shooting that. So they had to CGI off his mustache, and the shots where they had to do that, it's really obvious they had to do that. Like, he's got just this very isolated, uncanny valley right on the upper lip, and he's whoo. So there is that. But honestly, I hope that we get a Man of Steel 2 following this, because I feel like Cavill is much better at portraying this vision of Superman than he was at the very angry eyes of anger, version of Superman that we got for, definitely for BVS. Again, he worked pretty well in Man of Steel, but BVS, boy, did not work at all. But they seem to be moving him to something that works better for him. Now, I mentioned Ben Affleck before. Ben Affleck doesn't work as well in this as he did in Batman v Superman, and I think the thing is that he was brought in, and I think he was really on board with the BVS vision of Batman, and he was one of the highlights of that movie. He was good in that version of Batman. This lighter version of Batman, he's not bad, but he feels like he's floundering a little bit. He seems much less sure of himself as a performer in this role, with the character having been lightened up versus what we saw last time. And he doesn't seem to be making that transition to lighter material as well as, say, Henry Cavill is, or how well the other characters who are brought in. I think like, this has renewed an interest for me in the DCEU. I am I'm now actually genuinely interested to see this Aquaman get his own movie. This Flash, I don't know what they're gonna do with him. If they're still saying it's gonna be Flashpoint, I'm not sure I want to see that story done in film. But I would like to see more of Ezra Miller as the Flash. I already wanted to see more of Wonder Woman. I'd be down for seeing more Cyborg. Ray Fisher's a really good presence, a surprisingly compelling one. But I feel like Ben Affleck, he was one of the few pieces of the machine that really worked for Batman v Superman, and now that they've tinkered so much the rest of it, he now feels more out of place. And if he does end up leaving the part before the Batman gets shot, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. I think he's just not fitting in this revised vision of DC movies. So I think that's about it. Like I said, I don't want to oversell it, but as someone who did not like Batman v Superman, who was expecting to hate this, and I don't want it to feel like I was going in looking for reasons to hate it. Like I went in as open-minded as I could, but I did not expect to like this. I'd watch it again, which is not something I have not watched Batman v Superman again. I have not watched Suicide Squad again. I haven't even watched Man of Steel again, and I don't even think that one is all that bad. But I'd watch this again. I'm not going to go out of my way to watch it again. I'm probably not going to rush out to the theater. I wouldn't buy it, but if somebody was like, hey, this is on streaming, I haven't seen it, do you mind watching it again? I go, yeah, sure, that's fine. So I guess that's my equivalent of a it's fine rating. So there you go. So that's my thoughts on Justice League. Way better than I thought it would be, but that does only mean it's just fine. So what are your thoughts on it? If you're this far into it, I hope you've seen it, because I did get into what some would consider to be spoilers. So whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast that's available on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher Radio. I am also one half of the Punch Like a Girl podcast. That is a presentation of the Fire and Water Podcast Network. fireandwaterpodcast.com. There's links down below for all this stuff, and until next time, this council is adjourned.